Yes, I'm literally sitting on the ground with my legs crossed right now. Let's talk about the giant on the hills. I wanted to make conspiracy videos for Sword and Shield. I've been waiting for 3 to 4 weeks to pass. Now we're gonna talk about them. What really the giant on the hills is. Bear with me, I'll get my house back someday. If you would just shank the like button. Okay, yes, spoilers for Pokemon Sword and Shield. There's Megas in Kalos, there's Z Crystals in Alola. In Galar, the phenomenon that happens is Dynamaxing, where Pokemon grow gigantic in certain areas. It only happens where these spots emanate these powers, and cities have been built on top of it, specifically the 8 gym cities. Well, 7, but there's an 8th power spot somewhere that Chairman Rose wanted to move Spikemote's gym to, but my dude didn't agree. It's been long thought that the giant on the hills, since it was first shown in one of those first trailers in February of 2019, was something big, like the 3rd legendary alongside Zacian and Thick Boy Zamazenta. Before the games even came out, I forgot about this, but there was rumors that talked about an evil legendary that might appear in the game and even said the name Eternatus. But before we get to that, even when the games came out, there's a ton of speculation in-game. Sonya slowly takes you throughout the entire game, raising mystery about what really happened in Galar and what the mythology behind where they're standing at today really is. The first statue of the hero is totally fake. Even the murals painted everywhere are a fake story. It's cool to have that kind of realism in real life where stories are covered up and faked. In this game, they're literally lying to the player until B destroys that mural and we get to see one of the real homages to what happened. But the giant on the hills, is that Eternatus? When you make it to the giant on the hills, Sonya looks at it and while speculating with you comes to realize that the giant on the hills sounds both like the phenomenon where Pokemon grow gigantic and rampage, but also she notices the clouds on the hills drawing, and she's reminded of the ancient catastrophe called the Darkest Day because of it. Whoever created that art on the hill is likely someone who existed during that time period and saw Pokemon rampaging and drew this, or it was after the storm was cleared that they made sort of a depiction of what happened in fear to always remember by. There's a real giant on the hill somewhere in the world. It's not suitable for work, but I don't know what its purpose is, but it was based off that. What Sonya doesn't realize is that the 2 ideas she had are literally the same thing. They're linked. That's what the Darkest Day was. But when you see Eternatus at the end of the game, it does not look like what we see here. This looks like some sort of giant thing with legs walking around, and you see these little things around. We assume they're humans. One of them looks like a pig. They're not gonna outright mention sort of the gruesomeness like with X and Y when a lot of Pokemon died, but you could assume a lot of people died during this. This was the real Darkest Day incident, not like what happened with Eternatus after. That was barely the Darkest Day. That was the 10 minutes at the start of the Darkest Day. These people 3,000 or 5,000 years ago lived through the Darkest Day for maybe months, years. It seemed like the point of this drawing is that they were under Eternatus's command. They were under his control. They had to live by his rules. And Eternatus ruled them over for it seems like a long time. Then again, it is called the Darkest Day, but it would be really anticlimactic if it only lasted a day. It's just a general thing. The darkest of days. This giant on the hills is not Eternatus. This is not what Eternatus looks like, and unless Eternatus was hiding a form, which I do think he is, I'll talk about that later, this isn't Eternatus. Eternatus is in this picture, but I'll get to that later. This does represent Dynamaxing, and it actually is a Pokemon we can confirm. It actually is a Pokemon that exists right now, and it is spoilers because it is a Pokemon that hasn't been released yet. When I mean Pokemon, I mean a form. It is a Gigantamax Pokemon that exists in Pokemon Sword and Shield's code that hasn't been released yet for the public to see. So if you want to wait for the surprise for when Game Freak decides to reveal it, you can click off this video now. But you're not going to expect this, but what this Pokemon is Toxtricity. Toxtricity is kind of an interesting Pokemon in these games. There's also statues of it later on. But this is Toxtricity here in its Gigantamax form. So certain Pokemon have Gigantamaxes. I guess you could assume certain Pokemon are able to take control of Eternatus' energy better, and they start to mutate and like accept it in a way that works for them. And those specific Pokemon are the ones that can Gigantamax. It's not far-fetched to assume that there could be a Gigantamax of the starters. It's just that the starters we got don't work with that energy like that. You could assume the Darkest Day was Eternatus commanding a bunch of these Pokemon, and they were just roaming the Galar region, stomping everything. And I assume killed a lot of people in Pokemon, and they're really hiding from it was like Attack on Titan, they're hiding from everything. I would assume most of the Galar region probably got trampled and crushed, and had to be rebuilt again. And that kingdom that they show in the tapestries is that. This is Toxtricity's Gigantamax form. It's never been revealed yet, and I don't know if they're gonna plant something when they reveal it, like a certain trailer, because this is going to show what's on the Giant on the Hills. Maybe talk about it more in the anime, because in the anime, when they go to the train station, it looks exactly like it does in the game. So maybe Ash will visit the Giant on the Hills with everyone, and they'll be able to talk about things there. Oddly enough, that one girl near the Giant on the Hills actually says that no one knows what the name of it is. They're all taking pictures of it because it's such a sight, but they say that the name seems to have been forbidden or never passed down. Which is kind of weird because it's Toxtricity, and people know what Dynamaxing is unless Chairman Rose only recently brought that in because of his goal he wanted. But Dynamaxing seems to have always existed in Galar for all those thousands of years since Eternatus fell down here. But the name that is forbidden is Eternatus, and Eternatus is in that picture. That storm beside Toxtricity, that is Eternatus. Eternatus is like the eye of the storm. Eternatus doesn't even come down during the darkest day. If we were to visualize it, it would be in the sky, just coiled up as the center, and just be watching as all its Gigantamax Pokemon trample. There's a few conspiracies with Eternatus, like why its Dynamax cannon can specifically hurt other Dynamaxes if it is the essentially Dynamax Pokemon, the gigantic Pokemon. But it's like the commander of all the Dynamaxes, and it just sits in the sky watching. That storm that they look up at the sky and point out is both the darkest day, but also literally Eternatus. That's what the Giant on the Hills really is. It's kind of interesting to think that the people probably never even realized that the giant Pokemon that are trampling them is not actually the core of the problem. It's actually whatever's hiding in the sky up there, which kind of explains why you needed someone like Zacian and Zamazenta to actually pinpoint the core of everything and take down Eternatus in the sky. Now, what Eternatus is doing here, what its purpose is, imagine if Eternatus fell to like Jupiter. What is Eternatus doing? What is the point of Eternatus? What is its purpose? What does it do when it's causing this darkest day storm? What is it trying to gain? Well, I wanted to make a couple conspiracy videos for things I found interesting in this game, so we'll find out in the next video. It's gonna start getting conspiracy after this. So thanks for hanging out with me on the floor. Scroll down and shank that like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and there's a lot of fun things to talk about for Sword and Shield. I'm gonna see you guys in the next video, my dudes. And if you make fun of me in the comments for sitting on the floor with no table, with my computer's on the floor, it's a serious face.